Yeah. Well, once I finish here, I gotta run back to the hospital. So she's okay. Still in the labor process, but yeah, it's yeah. You talk about I'm working on my chapter 2 in the hospital, and I thought I'd never be doing that, but that's oh well. That's what we call adapting. I guess we call it adapting to change, the changing circumstances. So, without further ado, I want to thank everyone for taking some time out of your busy schedule. I greatly appreciate it. I have my phone set to ring out loud in case my wife calls me. If there's an emergency, I got to run back to the hospital. But today I want to just have a discussion. I'm going to present a little bit of John Kotter's work on leading change. And then I want to, more of a head talk, I want to describe some of the points that he was trying to make. And then I want to talk about the information that I gathered from the interviews and the readings that I've had. And then what I want to end is conclude it with and I want to remind you that I am recording right now. But I will, once I'm done, I'll end the recording. And then what I want to just do is break up into, there's enough people here, break up into small groups and have a discussion of what your perspective, of what you have seen, whether applying one of the 8 steps and what are the pitfalls you have seen and encountered in an academic library. And whether it's here, or whether it's at another institution or in higher education, I should say somewhere in the academic library community. Okay, and then that will be it. And I do agree. Let me start off again. I do greatly appreciate you taking some time out to help me with my project. And for those that are wanting to know, you're assisting me is greatly appreciated, because this is for my class in leading change that I'm taking at Azusa Pacific University, and all you're hopefully well aware that because I know you've seen me stay way late into the night typing at the reference desk, that I am in the doctoral program at Azusa Pacific University in higher education, and this is in my 3rd year. Okay, so in starting off for this project, for this class, I thought I need to understand leading change. I know that some of my colleagues in the class may have read this book. I know I did not. So I cannot just go out and start talking about leading change without having read, Kotter's work. So, and Kotter presented 6 steps, and I'm going to just briefly go through the 8 steps. And then I'm actually going to tie in with the research and the observations I did. Okay? And I interviewed 2 individuals. One's a director at an academic library and has a Learning Commons. The other one has somewhat of a traditional library, but the director is a private institution. The director that I talked to was at a multi-library, part of a multi-library community at a university in the East Coast. So Kotter actually describes in the steps that he mentions that leaders or individuals need to take to create change is that they need to create a sense of urgency. They need to create this sense of urgency by empowering and empower and lead change within the organization. It is to get people on board. It has to be a shock and then motivate them. And I'll use the example here. The president announced that we wanted a 5% cut across the board because of the lack of the low enrollment of students coming into this campus. But he also mentioned be prepared for not only the 5, but also prepared for the 8. And I know that there's some departments prepared for the 10. So, was there a reason why he needed to? Yes, he clearly stated that we need to change. The business model that we've been practicing is no longer relevant anymore. And given the fact that we need to adapt because we are facing a decline in the revenue, which is serious. So he created this, and if you notice those emails that he came out with, they were not polished. They were just brutal, but they were honest. They were honest in telling us what needed to change. In that, leaders also, step 2, is to create a coalition to bring people on board. It's one thing to present a vision and say we need to create change on this campus or within this organization or in academic libraries, but we need people. If we have a library director that says we need to do this, well, that library director better hope that we have, as Cotter's arguing, that we better have a coalition, put together people that allows you to lead that change, because one person cannot do it alone. It requires a team effort, a group working together to lead that change. But Cotter also describes that in creating this change, one needs to create a vision and strategy of how to lead this change. Now, it's one thing to talk about developing a vision, but it is to create, the reason why you need to create a vision is that it literally helps direct the change effort. In essence, it allows for developing strategies to achieve that vision. So, to stand up and say, I want to go, we need to create a new mission statement. Well, why do we need to create the new mission statement? What's wrong with the old mission statement? Maybe we don't have one. But maybe we have one, but what's wrong with the old one? Why do we need to create this new work? But here's the thing. Cotter notes that there are times when leaders fail because, one, they don't create the urgency of change. They don't bring people on board. And then they also have a problem, which he mentions, of communicating that change. How do you communicate change? Well, we're fortunate here. We're fortunate that we have the organization is actually semi-flat. It's not hierarchical here. I'm amazed. Everyone is amazed here. You guys, everyone communicate through email. Yet if you just cut the hole through the wall, you can talk to the director because she's sitting on the other side of the wall. But here, everything's through email. But it's so flat here. She can actually send out through email and people respond. But in organizations, sometimes you actually need to have these coffee hours or these stop by and meet the dean. But sometimes the communication is not just the verbal or the expressive. Sometimes it needs to be followed by action. Change in leading and communicating that vision sometimes requires that administrator to actually roll up their sleeves and, as they say, walk the walk. So here's an example. When I was a manager for a Bob's Big Boy, I remember getting on my hands and knees and cleaning the baseboards. You know, the little strips, you see them around here against the walls and the carpet. And I did that because it needed to be clean. But I realized that I can't just tell somebody to go down and clean the baseboards. Because if I tell them to clean the baseboards, they're not going to buy into this whole thing of, why am I got to clean the baseboards? So I actually was able to, when I cleaned the baseboards, there was a young lady that saw me go on my hands and knees, and I had my tie and tuck, I had a long sleeve shirt, and they had it rolled up. She goes, oh, Eric, you can't be on there, you're a manager. I'm like, I'm a manager, but I also have to do this. She goes, well, let me do it. And so she goes, so what can I do? And I said, well, if you don't mind, I'll clean this long part, but can you clean the other side? It's a lot smaller. She said, sure. So she gets on her hands and knees and gets a bucket and hands on her knees and starts cleaning it. And guess what? Someone else also got on their hands and knees and cleaned another side. So again, it's one thing to be talking about something that needs to be done, but it's another to actually physically do it. That way people can see what you're trying to do, and they actually have a vested interest themselves in saying, hey, if he can do it or she can do it, I can do it too. So, and in this process, Connor also talks about creating removing obstacles. And you remove the obstacles that we find that are challenges, that seem to obstruct our vision, obstruct our activities, our actions. Because we have these obstacles set in place, and they're there for a reason, but sometimes they just get in the way. And sometimes you just need to say, you know what? For the purposes of this project, we need to abandon these protocols so we can get this done. And we have to take risks, and that's the thing. We have to encourage to take risk. If we don't take the risk, then we're going to still be stuck with complacency. And so that's what a value of the leader is. The leader is, and this is where I'm thinking of the director, who said that when she came into her role, she found that obstacles were riddled. The place was riddled with obstacles, and people didn't want to have to deal with them. So she started to find out that what were the obstacles, and she went ahead and started removing these regulations that they had basically placed on themselves over the years. And in doing so, you also have to create, as Carter says, is create these short-term wins or goals. I think Carter recognized that it's one thing to say, we have an end goal. We're going to create, here's in one case, in one institution I'm at, we're dropping the LibGuides. Good Lord. They were hideous in the first place, and they were embracing, we're dropping Drupal, we're embracing LibGuides. For me, I don't care. I don't care. You give me a chalkboard, crayons. Give me Cheerios. I don't need the fancy stuff. Just tell me what you want. I'll throw it on there and leave me alone. Okay? Because this is the stuff that you put online. A lot of it's irrelevant. And think about it. We create these LibGuides, web guides. How useful are they? The idea of the mentality is that they are useful because students will access them and have resources. Okay. If we create a LibGuide, which we're working on, so we create the LibGuides. Yay. Do we get recognition? Is there anyone? Not really. So what's the value of continuing to create these LibGuides? Well, I don't know. Then the next question would be is, what would be the value of maintaining the LibGuides? Because once you create them, yeah, it looks beautiful, but talk to me in 2 years. A lot of the resources that you have on the LibGuides are outdated. So how do we create this empowerment? How do we create this win? And that's where I think you need to literally, and this is what Carter is trying to describe, is leaders need to recognize those individuals and give them rewards, these short-term gains. So we're not, let's say, here's an example. It's one thing to say we're going to migrate to a new course management software program. Yay. But the end goal of the course management software program shouldn't be the win. It should be, okay, where are we in this stage in the process? And then recognize those individuals that have contributed. Give them recognition and acknowledgement along the way. That way it's not this monolithic end goal. It's these short-term wins that create and empower the individuals. Now, the issue becomes is how do we get these, consolidating these gains to produce more change? Well, it's one thing, we have to continue, as Carter describes, is creating a continuous change by consolidating these gains. So look at what you've already established, what you have already accomplished, and evaluate how effective are they? How can you, but they are good, but how can we improve on these changes? Okay? You can't just say, hey, we did it, we finished the task. That's not what Kotter's talking about. Kotter's talking about, okay, you finished the task, but what's next? How can you take this success that you've just developed, or just received, and then improve on it? It's not as easy as one would think. And then the final step, which Kotter mentions, and this is the one that, oh, by the way, and this is also in consolidating and producing more change, though. You know, sometimes you need to hire people. You need to hire the people and promote and develop and encourage and implement and foster this change so it can continue to resonate within others. Hopefully it's contagious, but you know. So that way there's new ideas, new themes. Like for instance, we had the Drupal. Someone came in and started thinking, well, why don't we have Drupal? Why don't we work on this one? The LibGuides. Okay, now we have the LibGuides coming out. Guess what? Once we embrace the LibGuides, we're going to have to continue to improve the LibGuides. And when I say improve, I don't mean just the content. I'm going to say, let's say ADA compliance, accessibility, okay? And the last point that Kotter was trying to make is how do you cultivate and anchor this change in the organization? How do you be better off? How do you continue it? And this is what Kotter talks about, that the failure of management, 75% of the people on board have to embrace the concept of change. If you don't have the 75%, you're almost SOL. You're almost fighting uphill battle. Leaders need that. Leaders need those, but leaders also need to literally come out and say why. They need to have, they need to come out and argue why they need to bring out change. And a lot of people don't. It's this, oh, this is an idea, let's explore it. Well, I get a lot of these ideas that explore, well, why are we touching it? Why do we want to embrace it? And then a failure of leadership of continuous change is to continue the momentum of change. Here's an example out of the research and also of the interviews I've had conducted. Many of the failures of leadership of leading this change is that they forget to initiate why it's important to create the change. There's no impact. There's no reason of significance. It's like they're changed because of change. There's no sense of urgency, as they would say. And so, with the no sense of urgency, there's why do we have to go down this path? So there's not enough people on board to support the idea of this change. There's also, in addition to that, whether it was the library director I talked about or it was the a director of guest services, they actually saw that one saw change, saw that one at the director level saw that the university administrators did not understand what the role of the library truly was. Yet the director of the guest services thought that the library administrators understood what was going on, but they were slow to react, and they were more reactionary. In my opinion, I think that library administrators tend, not all, but they tend to be, and this is librarians as well, I should include them, we tend to be reactionary, but not not to our fault, no fault of our own. It's just that we have created a culture over the years, and I mean years, that librarians are more of the reactionary of hearing what people want to have, and then we try to implement it. And like for instance, here's an example. In the university that I'm working at, university administrators are trying to show student success in any way possible. So they ask the library, give me anything, give us anything. Well, what does the library do? We don't know what they want, so they're trying to find data in things that in my opinion, is irrelevant. Okay? Here's an example. How many times do students come in and use the labs? They'll do a number count. Well, okay. if you have 3 labs and you have, let's say, 30 computers in each lab, and you figure out the computers are used about 70% of the time, or I don't know, 120 people came into the labs during the day, what's the relevance of that? They're going to say, well, we contribute to student success because, these people needed computers. Well, that's not really relevant. You don't know what they're looking at. They can be looking at YouTube videos all day and checking their Facebook. Does that contribute to their success? I would say yes. Maybe it's some downtime, but the institution, the library is reaching for a stretch, trying to argue their relevance. The director actually made this point, that when libraries develop Learning Commons is an example. Learning Commons brings people in, so the administration and the university get excited. But they forget, as she said, that to build it is one thing, to maintain it is another. You need the personnel. You can't use the same people that were in the traditional library, roll them over to the new library. And I thought, brilliant, someone gets it. Because I see that in my institution. We built the Learning Commons. Guess what? People haven't changed. It's still the same people in the building. So you still have the same mindset. No implementation of workshops, process of thinking, rethinking of how students learn. None of that's occurred. It's still the same building. It's just new paint on the wall and some furniture from it looks like Target. So she argued that leading change is not just about creating the environment, but also changing the mindset of the personnel that works in that, and continually look for new ways to explore and to create this change within the environment in the library. The director I had talked to, he found that change was slow. Change became, as he said, was like molasses. You know it's coming from library administrators. Change is coming. And you see it coming, it's just slow. Now, I need to just make a note that the director of the guest services, the reference, he's coming from a public university that has a union, that has multiple layers. He has multiple people under him. I think it's 6 or 7 people. I thought that's massive. He has people under him, then he has those people have other people under them, then they have student workers. I'm like, man, you got so many layers between you, buddy. But then, you have the director at a private institution that literally, it's her, the people, and then you got students. And they have student workers, but it's a really more flat organization. But her argument is that she empowers the librarians and tries to encourage the librarians to take initiative, take the risk, and do a workshop, have an event with student organization, something that I think we should consider here at this institution. And I know it's a little challenging given the fact that we're more of a commuter campus on this campus, but it's worth trying. Because notice that the events, like the event that we held earlier, we packed them in because we showed a movie. It was that Harry Potter, was a few years ago. Had a Harry Potter event. It was brilliant. Place looked like Harry Potter was a Hogwarts. The next thing you know, we had people come in, but we never followed through with it. We never said, what's next? How can we improve on it? What can we learn from this event? We took it as a success, but we didn't take it one step further. And I think this is where Cotter describes as the issues of creating change as the challenges is to establish that sense of urgency and maintain it. I contend with creating the coalition is a problem. Creating a coalition. And also he does too. Step 1 and 2 is creating a sense of urgency and developing a coalition. I think those are important. The first 2 are usually missed, and the second 2, which is building on the successes and then also maintaining it. And this is where the director said that you have to maintain the success. Building it is one thing, maintaining it is something else. And that becomes a challenge. So you have to reach out. And how have we reached out? How have you as individuals, how have you in your positions looked at whether the projects you worked on or the administrators here or somewhere else, how have you looked at helping and create change? And how have you been part of that change? So at this point, I'm going to actually like to just wrap it up and say, again, I thank you for letting me talk to you about what I encountered and how the challenges that they found, and the presenting of briefly of Cotter and his 8 steps towards change. At this time, we're just going to break up in two groups because we're still small enough, and we're going to have a quick discussion. And thank you so much.